Welcome to the TrotCast Revolution. I am Jay Hochsteller, and I am joined always by...
Always Ryan Macedonio. Jay, how you doing?
I'm very good today. How about you?
Fantastic. We're back to our normal selves. Last week's Revolution, I did a little animation of us, and all hand drawn. I drew that entire episode by hand. It was amazing, right?
You got to get a career change if that's the case, because
I tried a little different. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I tried different artistic styles and renderings. I tried some different things. I think it came out well. Go back and watch the legalized gambling episode of us.
Yeah, you'll see a whole different side.
Whole different side of us. Do we have anything before we want to jump into this episode, Jay?
No, we have an embrace debate today, though. Cause we're not agreeing.
No, not even close. Not even close.
Usually we're kind of on the same track with a few different ideas each. But this time, it's their sides have been taken.
Their sides have been taken. So you want to lead the way on this?
Yeah, sure. So basically, via our weekly just talking back and forth with each other, we had a debate of who would be the better thing for harness racing, Wiggleit Jiggle It or Walner, if they were both healthy and just got to race as much as they were been projected to race, if they were no problems at all. And I took the trotter, and Ryan took the pacer. And there's for a variety of opinions on each side, but and that's kind of what we're going to get into is why do I think Walner would be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and why does Ryan think Wiggleit Jiggle It is the thing that harness racing needed?
Yeah, I think it started because wasn't there if you could have I don't know if it was it basketball or something. It was like if you could have one person without an injury or to come back, who would it be? How did this exactly start? I can't remember.
I think it was we kind of did a crossover of some sport where if you could have this person versus this person forever. Oh, it was here's what it was. It was they said if you could take an athlete and remove injuries from their career, who would you take?
There we go.
And I immediately tweeted out Walner. I was like, I think he would have been the most generational trotter, even surpassing Muscle Hill in that regard. And then you messaged me a little bit later. It's like I would take Wiggle. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I think I'd still take Walner.
Yeah,
and here's where we are.
There we go. Real quick, is there any other horses that we're missing? I mean, we're a little bit biased because it's 2018, so these horses have raced in the last year. I don't know. Forget about injuries. Is there any other honorable mentions? I mean, is Always Be Mickey in there?
See, with Always Be Mickey, I think we might have had less of a career if he would have stayed healthy. I think the injuries kind of prolonged his career and he didn't go off to stud as quickly. Because if he doesn't get hurt at 3, probably wins the Breeders' Crown, probably races at 4 and does phenomenally. But he doesn't get a chance to grow into himself, doesn't race for quite as long, and maybe we never get the 46 flat mile. He might have gone off to stud quicker than that with just a great 4-year-old season, which would be great, but not what we were blessed with his last year of racing.
Sure, and it's tough to compare eras. I mean, it's listen. You have Annihilator, you have some of those horses, Camluck, there's plenty of horses like that. Just like saying Johnny Unitas versus Joe Montana, it's really tough to compare. So I think we could maybe do that with horses within the same generation if we want to go back. If we take, I
think honestly, the one that we probably are missing out on the most is Mission Brief.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
she, I would say she's probably faster than Hannelore, and we never really got a chance to actually see it because she got hurt, unfortunately. But, she was the fastest 2-year-old ever. She was ungodly fast at 3 and just didn't have it. She got hurt before a 4-year-old campaign. That would probably be the one, and she would have raced for probably a very long time if she would have never got hurt. She could have been in that moneymaker mold.
Okay, so I think we can go back and say, hey, let's pick 2 horses from the 90s, pick 2 horses from the 80s, pick 2 horses from the 70s, things like that. These can be future episodes, but right now we're gonna. I think it's fair enough to compare Wiggle and Walner. I think one rule, Jay, we're going to establish is no major injuries. This is what this is. No major injuries. They're still going to have their regular race schedules. They're not going to race an unlimited amount of times. They're still going to race their stake schedule for what they would have, they're not, again, no 50 times a year. So the normal stake schedule, and just we're eliminating major injuries. They could have a little soreness here and there, but just what would happen if these horses weren't majorly injured? So is there anything else we want to get out of the way before I bury you on this argument?
No, I think we've established what the ground rules are here, and we'll see which side everybody wants to take.
Okay, so you wanna lead the way on this? Tell everybody why Walner is the second best horse to have no injuries behind the obvious number one answer.
In my opinion, if Walner never got hurt, he would have been the greatest trotter in the history of harness racing. You can say Muscle Hill. I'm sorry. Walner was so fast, it was just breathtaking, and he was such a physically, imposing horse. I honestly, there was no doubt in my mind that if he would have got a perfect track at Lexington, he trots in sub 49. I think he goes 48.4, maybe 48.3, and does it convincingly. On top of that, I really think he probably has the greatest 3-year-old campaign for a trotter ever. I think no one even comes within 5 lengths of him on the final days. And on top of that, I really sincerely believe with Ken Jacobs as his owner, he doesn't retire at 3. He keeps going for at least a few more years, because Ken Jacobs is a guy that he wants to win. He wants the glory. He's that great type of owner that he would much rather see his horses race and enjoy the ride of it rather than just take the quick buck and run. Now, he still made a great buck on this because he kind of had his hand forced, but I really believe he races at 4, maybe even 5, and if he keeps rolling, has a chance to win the Prix de Marique, the Elite Lop, keeps making probably $1.5 million, $2 million a year if he just dominates everybody. I really think he would have kept rolling.
Okay, so 2 things from there. I think the 3-year-old stud kind of cutoff that a lot of horses now have a days. I think we need to kind of separate that and say, is Walner as important with Ken Jacobs as an owner, or does he go on, to race at 4 and 5, or does he get a 3-year-old season? So I think that he would have to go into his 6-year-old season. So that's 3 more years of racing, because for him to be as important as Wiggleit Jiggle It, I think that he would have to race and win in the Prix d'Amérique, and that you have to be 6 years old to race in there. So he would have to race 3 more years of skipping out on stud duty. Now, listen, if he has 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old career, yeah, that right there is going to be better than anything that Wiggleit Jiggle It can accomplish. I'll just say that right there. So your argument's 1, if he does that.
Yeah, and that's a big if. There's no doubt about it.
What are the chances that happens? And here's my other question is, if he goes on to race at 4, 5, and 6, wins the Prix d'Amérique, do you think he comes back at 7? Because look at what Bold Eagle's doing. And, I mean, he missed out on 3 in a row. But that back-to-back years, that first year takes you to the top. The second year, man, that elevates you to a whole nother level. And the third year is astronomical. So now you're talking about 5 years missing out on breeding. That's a big question. So I think maybe for this argument, we got to just say he comes back at 4. Is that fair? Where do you want the cutoff to be realistically?
Yeah, I think, we'll probably go, let's just go with the 4-year-old route. He absolutely dominates as a 4-year-old, wins Maple Leaf, Breeders' Crown, TVG, et cetera, sets some world records. I think, kind of hedging our bet where, he definitely goes past 3, but he, eventually the money just becomes too tough to turn down.
Right, and now for anybody that's doesn't know, Wigleit's a gelding, so the whole point. He's racing. So he missed his 2-year-old career. He started early at 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, let's say. Now, Foiled Again is into his 14th year. I mean, not 14th year racing, but, I mean, now we're talking 8, 9, 10 years of racing from Wiggleit Jiggle It, just like we got it Foiled Again. So that's kind of what I'm comparing it to. So I think we're going to go the 2.5 years of Walner versus 10 years of Wiggleit. That's kind of where fine-tuning this? Is that fair to say, Jay?
Yeah, let's go with that.
So, my first question, Jay, is how many titles did Dan Marino win?
That would be a big fat
0. Okay, and do you know? Is he ever considered the greatest of all time?
No, he can't take it on a touchdown Tom.
No, I mean he's always like 4th on the list, 5th on the list, right? He always gets put behind Elway because Elway won 2 and he went to 5 Super Bowls. And Elway and Marino were pretty much talented. And Marino was probably had a better arm and all that fun stuff. My point I'm saying is more important to win in competition. And do you remember any game that Marino had at all?
That was a little before my time, too.
Oh, okay.
But no,
fair enough. I would say that it doesn't matter to me. Like, yes, it's nice to have these fast miles. But, like, okay, take Sebastian K, take Hannelore, take Always Be Mickey. Who did Always Be Mickey beat? Because I could tell you who he didn't beat that day. He didn't beat Wiggleit Jiggle It. Who did Sebastian K beat? Who doesn't matter. But we can remember the great races, who they beat, what happened, all those things like that. To me, it's more important of a race than it is a specific accomplishment.
With Wiggleit Jiggle It, I see you have the ability to kind of capture a fan base, kind of in the mode of Zenyatta in Thoroughbreds, where you had people who would just go to see Zenyatta race, and they got a couple more years than just a typical Triple Crown winning colt out of the Thoroughbreds, and she basically had a cult kind of following with her. Same with California Chrome, really. He had kept racing past 3 and it kind of had a creepy cult following for him. They would, hound the owners and trainers about it. But with Walner, I think the reason in terms of just an appeal to getting fan stuff is I think he takes the global appeal where Wiggleit, he's a pacer, so you get some down under flavor to him, but they don't focus on it too much. Where Walner, he would become a wildly European loved horse. They love just trotting in general. So if you have what could be the greatest trotter ever, you're going to get Sweden, you're going to get France, you're going to get Italy, Germany, etc. You're going to get the biggest global appeal that American harness racing has had in a long time.
See, now the one thing that with Walner is his class of horses was okay. I'm not going to say that they're bad or worse or better, but clearly he was heads and shoulders above his class of horses.
Yes.
And the one time he stepped out on the track with them, he destroyed everybody and set every stakes record. So I think that kind of hinders him a little bit. I don't care. Like, if I'd only like to see it once. If he goes in 149, okay, like he went in 149. But then I would want to see races after that. And there would be no way that his competition, he would barely, so he wouldn't have any competition he had no competition at 2. He had no competition at 3. I mean, I can only watch a horse win by 4 or 5 lengths so many times. And once I see the record of 148 and 4, like, okay, I'm good. The thing I want to keep seeing week after week after week is racing. And that's what Wiggleit Jiggle It. How many rivalries has Wiggleit Jiggle It had already in his career? How many has Walner had? And now, again, Walner didn't really have a chance to get a rivalry, but he didn't have a horse that was an equal to him when he stepped out on the racetrack. So I think that severely hinders what he would have gotten. And that would have been this year. No, Walner would have been 4 this year, right? Or no? How old? I didn't even know.
Walner would have been 3 this year, 4 in 2018.
Okay, so let's look forward to next year. Who's he going up against? Just Hannelore Hanover?
Yeah, I mean, you got Hanover, Hanover, Marion Marauder is basically his two largest competitors, and you're hoping, you know, you always get the chance of somebody rising up, which is what you're going to have to hope for in terms of actually getting a competitive race from him. I don't think anybody could match him. That's just my personal fanboy opinion of him, but
So you think that Walner has yeah, he would if he wins the Hambletonian and the Breeders' Crown. Yeah, he'd get plenty of lore from Sweden and France, but what about in America? Because fast miles don't really do much. Yeah, they're good. It's a spike, but fast miles, like you're telling me you would go out to see Walner sets the track. I agree that the lead up to 48-4 would be, but you're saying that he would instantly break it pretty much within a couple of races, and then you're going to keep going out to see him going 48-4.
yeah, people appreciate greatness is basically what I chalk it out. If you ask, who's the most famous thoroughbred of all time, it's Secretariat. He's by far and away, if you ask enough common people the Secretariat name, because he gets that guy can run like Secretariat, and he's just kind of that household jargon type of name. I think that is what you're going to have the appeal is people just want to see greatness. That's in any sport. If somebody has a long unbeaten streak, all of a sudden they get paid attention to. Women's basketball gets totally ignored except for the UConn women, because people just love to see them just have this era of greatness around them. They just dominate, and that's people watch them even though they're up by 50.
But half the reason people don't watch UConn women's basketball in general is because the competition is not as good. If they're now Baylor's popped up, and some of the Tennessee women, like, they're competitive with UConn women. But the reason why people ignore, I think what would happen with Walner is like, yeah, okay, I'll watch the replay online. I don't need to. How fast is he going to go? I don't need to watch him go and beat horses by 5 or 6 lengths. I want the competition. How many Wiggleit Jiggle It races can you name? Probably 10 or plus, I would say, where you're like, holy, okay, start from his 3-year-old year into his 4-year-old year. We've already got a huge following from Wiggleit Jiggle It because of, yeah, he's not the fastest horse, but he can race everywhere. He's tough as nails, and he's raced against all sorts of horses, and he's proven it against the older ranks and beat the fastest pacer of all time. So to me, the competition, the racing, he may not be the fastest. He's never going to stretch and win by multiple lengths. He's always going to be tough, and you're going to be like, I got to watch, how is Wiggleit going to win this race? Is he going to be because he's done it all sorts of ways.
Yes, the only other thing is, I don't know, like, past Mickey, who, like, last year, who was his equal? Like, who would have been like, man, that horse could beat Wiggleit Jiggle It on if Wiggleit Jiggle It's healthy. There was not anybody that is going to touch Wiggleit Jiggle It in that class. No disrespect to them. They're good horses, but they're not Wiggleit Jiggle It.
You're talking about
I think we're selling Wiggleit speed a little bit short when he's healthy.
Oh, well, but it's not. He was never regarded as freaky fast. He was always elite fast, but he never was. I mean, he was crazy fast on a half-mile track, yes. So you're saying that if Wiggleit raced this year, he would have.
I think he dominates all that.
Oh, absolutely.
Outside of some bad posts or something like that.
But
like the years before, he had ungodly fast horses to go against. He had Always Be Mickey, and he had Freaky Feet Pete.
And he had Shambhala and Rock and Ron and some of these other horses that.
Yeah, I in my opinion, he blows Rock and Ron's doors off outside of being, triple teamed in the pre-det up north.
Sure.
I don't even regard that. That wasn't even fair. But if Shambhala, he went one race where they kind of, he blew their doors off. But other than that, I mean, where was Shambhala this year? He wasn't. He was not as competitive as he was, the year of Mickey and Wiggleit.
Sure. One of the things, though, which is why Wiggleit, part of the appeal, the exact reason why he has the appeal, how many racetracks has Wiggleit Jiggle It raced at? He's raced at pretty much damn near them all. I mean, except for a few small tracks. But if if they threw $100,000 invitational, Wiggleit would be there because he could race on every size racetrack. He's traveled all over the country, all over North America to race. Where is Walner raced? Like, he races at like 2 tracks and that's it. So to me,
well, no. He raced at 2. He raced at Saratoga,
he made a break and he won one, right?
He made that was the night I said this is the greatest trotter I've ever seen. That horse made a break, spotted the field 20 at the like quarter pole, and then said, "Okay, I'm still going to blow all your guys' doors off in a track record."
Yeah, but and then they never went back. They made it. They said, "Okay."
Well, because all his best races were for the most money were at big track. He was at Red Mile and he was at the Meadowlands. Like, you can't really.
Yeah, but there's no appeal. He's missing out on a lot of other tracks and other races where Wiggleit Jiggle It.
But at 2, there wasn't that many. Like, there's not many Grand Circuit races on smaller tracks.
Okay, but so let's say what would he have done at 3? He would have been in the Beale, the Earl Beale, right? Which is at Pocono.
Been in the Earl Beale, Canadian Trotting Classic.
Okay.
He goes up there. I sincerely think he goes to the Yonkers Trot.
No.
Because Ken Jacobs is yes, 100%. There, if you ask Ken Jacobs what state he wants to win in, he wants to win in New York.
Okay, there's no doubting that.
Like, he wants his horses to race in New York. He will go to a New York race before a Grand Circuit race.
Now, again, we're not saying that injuries and things like that aren't a part of it. We're just saying major injuries. Don't you think with his experience on a half-mile track that they would have avoided all half-mile track racing?
Honestly, he was just a headstrong 2-year-old then. It wasn't that he couldn't trot around the turns. He trotted around the turns the rest of the time fine. It was just a matter of, like, it showed he made a break at the Meadowlands the one time because he was just wanting to run over the top of horses that were in front of him. I think as he gets older and everything, that becomes less of an issue, and they're going to want to win the Triple Crown, is what I would truly think.
But we're still missing out on the tour that made Wiggleit Jiggle It so special. I mean, hitting these, the mid-range tracks where not a lot of horses can go. I mean, okay, yeah, he hit Meadowlands, he hit Mohawk, he's going to hit Pocono. I would be, if you're saying that Yonkers is an option and then traveling out to Hoosier, obviously, for the Breeders' Crown last year, I mean...
Yeah, he would have been Yonkers, he would have been Vernon for the Zwag, he would have been, obviously, Hoosier, he obviously goes to Lexington. And then... the only thing I think that Wiggleit definitely is going to have an advantage of is there's a lot more areas to race for an age pacer than there are for age trotters. They don't. They have. There's the Potomac. There's the Confederation Cup. There's all those different kind of races at smaller tracks for good purses. So there's there's a reason to go to them. Where the trotters, they just don't have nearly as many of those opportunities. They have big opportunities, but they don't get the smaller tracks throwing a big thing at them. It's the spirit of Massachusetts, but
we're not talking about them anymore. We agreed on that.
Oops.
But I just think that Wiggle can connect better. On one of the reasons is, hey, we're getting Wiggleit Jiggle It to our track. Tracks can help like promote the horse better because they're having races. He's been to every track. Hey, we can have the Little Brown Jug. Things like that. So Walner's not going out there. Well, I mean, there's no big race in Delaware.
Yeah, there's not for exactly that. But although there's really not, like, yeah, you don't really have a big race for Wiggleit Jiggle It to go to the Little Brown Jug after.
But him still going there because he won the Little Brown Jug. If he goes back as an age pacer, now that's still a spectacle, if you want to call it that, because he already won a major race there. There is no major race for trotters, at Delaware. Did I explain that right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, the Ohio fans are going to appreciate just because he won the Little Brown Jug, and it's kind of a nostalgia pop.
Yeah.
So him going there, even if it's, do they have an invitational there, an older?
Yeah, it changes sponsors. I know it was called the Winback Pace the one year. It's like a $50,000, gun. They actually set a world record there the one year,
okay.
I believe.
So, I mean, that would be something that he, listen, he traveled there to do warm-ups and lead a post parade. So, what was it, last year, 2 years ago when I think it was when he was 4.
Yeah.
He raced at Harrington on Monday and then traveled across for Thursday to lead the post parade. So, I mean,
I think that's one thing that really speaks. It's going to be work in Wiggleit Jiggle It's favor in this thing is that George Teague is a showman and he wants to give the fans a show. Where I think Linda would be more focused on what's best for the horse. I want to be very protective. I want to make sure I hit all the spots that he needs to and without hurting him. Where George Teague's like, I know what this horse can do. I know he's going to be able to take it, but I'm going to stretch him a little farther than you would most horses because the people need to see him.
I think that regardless of how many years, let's take it from here. Walner wins a Hamiltonian. Now, always, whether it's whether Ken and Linda and Tim and everybody's deciding, hey, you know what? We're going to go 4 more years. Let's say they make that decision right then. We're going to go 4 more years. We're going to win the Prix d'Amérique in 3. There's still that every time they step out on the racetrack, we have to make sure that this is the best race that they can do. There's still, because of the stud value. At some point, there's going to be stud value, right? You don't think, Ken isn't going to do a tour with this horse because now they're still in the back of their head, okay, stud. What if he loses a race? We're not saying Walner's going to go undefeated or Wiggle goes undefeated. That's part of what I think that's Wiggle's favor is that he loses. Walner, they want this horse to go undefeated, so they're going to pick their spots so they're not hitting every little. That's why I don't think they're going to try to do all these other little tracks. They're going to pick their spots perfectly because they still have in the back of their mind, I want to make sure that he's got a great stallion record for the pedigree book. Whereas Wiggle is like, yeah, you know what?
Next week.
Fuck it. Let's go over there. You know what? Hey, let's go over here. Oh, there's an open invitation. Yeah, we're in. Count us in. Like, that's part of that. They're not afraid to lose, and they're not afraid to just go places and travel and see people and meet. That's what is endearing about Wiggle versus Walner, where it's kind of like there's Walner, but let's look behind the glass, kind of like he's protected.
The way I look at Walner, though, and it's not too different because I think he was handled in a pretty similar way, was Some Beach Somewhere. Now, Some Beach Somewhere, people don't realize how many people he actually brought into the fandom of harness racing. I've seen a surprising amount of people. I scroll through like harness racing history, stuff like that. People say, well, I became a fan after I started watching Some Beach Somewhere. And I never really realized it until I started reading these people through social media that they say specifically that this great horse got me to like harness racing. And I think that's what Walner could be. He could be that and more, in my opinion. And it would be due to multiple reasons. I think he would race longer than 3, unlike Some Beach Somewhere, and he has that trotting appeal that would cross the Atlantic. So I really think that's where the idea of that great horse that it just it captivates a people's mind. Like for example, American Pharoah, he effectively crushed all his competition, and there's people that were crying when he won. Because and just that idea of greatness, I think you might be selling a little bit short. Because I'll watch on the Olympics, if I can hear something about like this guy's won 3 gold medals, I'll watch him. I don't care what sport it is, but I know the guy's great. I'll watch him.
I think with Some Beach Somewhere, people started watching him after he lost in such fashion. Now I know people watch the North America Cup. Canada watched the North America Cup. The North America Cup was. I remember that. I remember watching it that year. He just went to the front, and it was boring. It was great for Canada because it was a Canadian horse, and a lot of people have attended. But there wasn't any appeal to him before he lost in the Meadowlands pace because it was so crazy that how he lost. So I think, I don't know if Walner had that, where a horse could jump up and beat Walner in crazy fashion. And Walner then could come back and destroy everybody also. And then also, too, that I remember Some Beach Somewhere at Yonkers, it was pouring rain. I remember I walked out, it was pouring rain. I was racing that night and watched him almost run out onto I-87 in the third turn there, and he still beat Shadow Play, I think it was, in the dead pouring rain. Those are the things that I remember. I don't really care that he went in 46. I don't watch that race. I don't watch the Red Mile replay over and over and over again. I watch the Meadowlands Pace. I watch the Messenger Stakes. I watch some of the other races where, no, I want to see them challenge. I really don't care about time or domination. I just want to see competition. Michael Phelps, he had Ryan Lochte, right? He's the guy who, and what?
Yeah,
and that. Was it a
the bald dude?
Yeah,
the bald dude was always challenging.
So you got to have challenges, and if somebody could challenge Walner, but we're saying that no, Walner's in a whole nother league, just like Muscle Hill. He was kind of bored. How many replays do you go and watch of Muscle Hill? We just know that he's great, but I think that kind of wears out after a little bit. Where you want to remember great Super Bowls and great World Series, so that there's that replay value.
I think that would be on the USTA, the tracks, in order to kind of build him up in this kind of giant slaying marketing thing. Like, you got, even if you don't think that somebody could beat it, you got to build it up as they're going to try and take down the king of harness racing and stuff like that, because that's how you kind of get that David versus Goliath thing. So when it happens, it's a huge deal because you've made it a huge deal. Now that goes into a whole nother thing of people doing their jobs and actually doing a marketing job correctly, but that's another topic for something we've covered 16 zillion times on another day. But I really think you could build that, he's going to dominate in as many starts as you can probably imagine, but there are, in a perfect world, there would be that time where somebody knocks him down, like things don't go out for him and he gets beaten an epic stretch duel. It could be Hannelore. I mean, she's certainly fast enough if the race would work out in her favor versus Walner's. Maybe Hannelore could create that Mickey Wiggleit, it would be a different style where you'd have Mickey was super fast and Wiggleit was just an absolute grinder. You just have two unbelievably fast horses and a lot of stretch tools, because I think they both had enough gate speed to just blow out in front of everybody.
Now here's an interesting thing too, and I mean, Mark Weaver's pretty, open about this stuff. I honestly think that they were very smart with Hannelore, and they picked their spots when they went up against the boys.
Yeah.
I don't think
it probably doesn't go against. You might be right. Yeah.
I don't think you would ever see Hannelore Hanover versus Walner. I think you'd maybe see it once, and they would severely pick their spots. But there's no way, because there's no way that we would get multiple matchups of Hannelore Hanover versus Walner, because if that was the case, he would have put her in every single male stake open trot race. But no, they picked. Now maybe that was their way of picking easy money.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, and maybe like the Armbro flight up in Canada, I don't remember what the purses were versus the male versus the females, but I just don't see, like, they're not in that race to get second. So I don't think we're seeing Walner versus Hannelore Hanover ever. Maybe once or twice, and it would be a real severe pick your spot.
Yeah, I think you'd have to rely on two things with Walner's competition. You'd have to rely on him going to Europe at some point where he would certainly have competition, or B, somebody rising up, which unfortunately any 3-year-old who had 4 legs and could trot forward got retired this year. Mm-hmm. So now, hell if I know who you're going to pick to be the 4-year-old this year who's going to be up and coming. Again, that's why I always was kind of a proponent of the Corral rule, because I liked seeing more horses race at 4, but we don't really have that anymore. So here we are with a very depleted 4-year-old class on both sides.
Yeah, I think that the Pacers just have a little bit more. Again, Pacers are fast. Like, yeah, they may not. The group this year was good. It was solid. I think they were all even, and we've had this discussion plenty of times.
Even is probably better than one dominant, in that case.
But I think that any of those horses could still beat Wiggleit on any given race. I think that it would be versus the Trotters. You're kind of like, even the older ranks, it's kind of like, well, I think that the Pacers, they're just inherently better racing, and that's suited for Wiggleit Jiggle It, because why was the race that Wiggleit became a superstar was the Jug, because he came back. People want to see, they don't want to see crazy speed. They want to see the heart, the fight, the champion. He was done in the last turn, and then he came back, and then that channeled into his 4-year-old season. It was like, and then I think too, and you know, listen, we all love Timmy, but it's endearing. Montreal hasn't won shit, you know? So it's cool to see him grow as well, and he's a young kid, so it's cool. Like, Timmy's, you know, won a bunch of stuff, so it's, when Timmy wins now, it's kind of like, okay, like, Timmy won another race, but there's no marketability when Timmy wins a race anymore, unless it's a race he hasn't won, and there's very few of them left. So when Montreal wins a race and George wins a race, it's like, that's a little bit extra. Linda's already won a bunch of crap. Tim's already won a bunch of crap. Ken Jacobs already won a bunch of crap. So there's nothing there to check off and say, oh, I want to watch Linda get this. No, she's already won a bunch of stuff. And it's great.
I mean, so is George. But, I mean, you know, Montreal is the key there with he hasn't won a lot of stuff. So, and I really, like, you know, like I said, George is... There couldn't have been a more perfect person to train Wiggleit Jiggle It and, you know, drive it, just in terms of a marketability standpoint. Because, you know, George is a very great quote, great face for him, along with, you know, and had the story of, you know, Clyde Francis, you know, his second trainer that he listed down as trainer and everything for that. And you had Montreal, who's, you know, he's not afraid to, you know, to tell you if things went wrong or anything like that, own up to his mistakes, and, you know, celebrate when the opportunity arises. Mm-hmm. You know, I think Timmy doesn't show the emotion that Montreal would show, you know, at crossing a wire in the winner's circle and stuff like that. And plus, one of the things that we don't sell about Wiggleit Jiggle It is everybody always wanted to watch the winner's circle to see who he might kill.
That's right, yeah.
As the picture was being taken, where Walner was pretty mild-mannered in there. But yeah, that is another little a little notch in Wiggleit Jiggle's favor, is that his winner's circles were must-see television.
So overall, I mean, it wasn't even close. I won this argument. I mean, we all can agree. Kate, we agree, right? We agree. Kate says yes.
I think you might put words in her mouth there.
Also, too, listen, when we have these discussions, this is classic sports talk radio, just garbage. I mean, it's hot garbage because
it'll never happen.
It doesn't. No, what? It doesn't matter. Like, you know, listen, Walner. The flashes of breath. He's here. I'll say one nice thing about Walner. I cover Walner. Okay, I wanted to see him. Timmy was excited. It was great to see Walner on this path, and it sucked that we couldn't get, you know, that he couldn't even stay healthy to get to the Hamiltonian. It sucks, and I think that, you know, it's great when we have flashes of brilliance, and I just hope that. His you know, here's another thing too I want to say. I don't think that, do sires really, like, let's say a sire's gone, right? Like, are we saying that there isn't one to replace that one? Because I think if Some Beach Somewhere is not there, somebody's winning those races.
Yeah, I've never, you know, people like, oh, he'll be missed. Like, you know, like, there's still going to be 10 horses in a final, and somebody's going to win the race, and therefore that sire will get the next bump up. You know, like, it sucks because he produced so many nice horses, but they're nice horses because they were beating other horses, so somebody else that was being beaten will now become the next, you know, Some Beach Somewhere in that regard. Yeah, it's nice to have great sires, but they're replaceable. I can't even. I won't entertain the argument like about that, because somebody will come up the next year, and eventually somebody becomes the next super sire. It's just the way it works.
Because here's the reality. Like, now, Some Beach Somewhere is a great sire. Muscle Hill's a great sire. Those are collectively the two, probably the best trotter, best pacer ever. I mean, that could be a whole nother. But I mean, is that unarguable, right? Greatest pacer ever is Some Beach Somewhere. You know, greatest trotter ever is Muscle Hill, right? That's pretty, you know, you can have your arguments here and there. But who's the fastest trotter ever? Sebastian K. Who's his sire? I don't know.
I believe it's Korea, if I'm not mistaken.
Hannel or Hanover? Who's her sire? Ideal
Swan for all.
Swan for all.
Come on.
Okay. Propulsion. Now that's a Muscle Hill, right?
Yeah.
Propulsion's a 49 and 3 horse.
Redley Express is Ready Cash.
Right. What was I going to say? Oh, the Pacers. Always Be Mickey. What's he? I don't know.
He's an Always a Virgin.
Okay, always a virgin. So the point is,
Wiggle Jiggle It's a Mr. Wiggles. So
right,
yeah, I mean,
So the point is that all of these now the 2 fastest 2-year-olds ever with Down by the Seaside and the other one, Huntsville, they're Some Beach Somewheres. You know, what's Walner? He ain't a Muscle Hill, right? What is he? He's a chapter 7. Chapter 7. So the point is, like, there's plenty of great sires, and it's unfair.
It's why I never mentioned, like, in my argument, I never mentioned, well, Walner's going to go on to change the breed and stuff, because, like, it just doesn't do enough for me in terms of harness racing as a whole, because somebody's going to change the breed. If it's not Walner, it's somebody else.
Yeah. So Walner comes from a great pedigree, but you know, like, so that was just a kind of one thing I wanted to kind of throw out there. So we're having a little fun. I hope everybody enjoyed this. If you want to put on the comments or whatever who won this argument, but
you can just write down Ryan now because he'll change the comments anyways.
Right? Yeah, I'm gonna edit all the comments anyway, so just write down me. Jay, is there anything one last thing you want to get out of the way?
No, I really enjoyed it. You know, it's one of those things where it's a supreme hypothetical that, God, it would have helped harness racing if both of them would have been healthy. But you know, it is what it is. But there's, in terms of those 2 horses, find the next 2 ones of these and market the hell out of them, I guess would be my final point. So we don't have to worry about these things anymore.
I hope that, and hopefully, Wiggleit Jiggle It, I mean, he was supposed to qualify, and then he had a setback, and I don't know if it's winter.
I don't know. I'm not overly optimistic, but it's a shame.
You know, he's got back issues. Listen, being an elite athlete is rough. And, you know, Foiled, that it kind of what makes Foiled Again what he's doing, and I'm glad that we're getting some marketing for Foiled Again, because who the hell is going to watch, you know, a Tuesday night or a Thursday night race at Yonkers, like in a massive level, and people are doing that. So we're getting some play with Foiled Again to show how great it is and how hard it is, and hopefully Wiggle, you know, back issues are tough. I don't know what's going on. They've been keeping things close to the vest. Hopefully he can come back. Even if we get one more year out of Wiggle, I think it'll be great. And maybe because it's a little bit softer, open, you know, field, maybe he can jump up and win a couple of these races when he's healthy again. Because, I don't really care about how fast the race was.
Yeah, well, maybe there will be another gelding who didn't race it too to become the next Wiggleit Jiggle It too.
Yeah, there you go.
Hopefully he's in my barn. But.
So that's it. We'll put a bow on this, Jay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm Ryan Macedonio. You can find everything at TrotCast. Visit TrotCast.com. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Send me your hate mail. I may block you. I'm starting to block a lot of people because ain't nobody got time for that, Jay. I don't got to be reading 100 notifications from people who don't like me. Come on, what is this? So everything's at TrotCast. Take us away, Jay.
I'm Jay Hochstetler. You can find me at Twitter, at JD Harness. I'll tweet about wrestling and horse racing mostly, and I don't know, I'll probably retweet something that'll make you laugh. So give me a follow. Thanks for listening, and join the revolution.